Long ago, when the land of Abrille was still fairly young, the druids of Uena, spirit of the forest, planted a sapling known as Liferoot, which was said to be the connection between the material world and the realm of spirits. Liferoot grew into the largest tree ever seen, blossoming bright yellow flowers once a year as a sign of peace, fertility, and prosperity. This blossoming became known to the people as the Bloomtide and was widely celebrated, for Liferoot spread its blessing across the entire continent, sprouting new wild growths and bestowing great yields for farms. It was not long before Liferoot became used as a political symbol, with those most blessed by the tree's growth finding themselves fit to rule the lands. Over the next 200 years, Abrille naturally organised into 3 separate factions, the Leshkin, the Knockfolk, and the Sunhoods. Each faction was charged with protecting a different region of land touched by Liferoot's blessings. Over time, rivalries between these factions began to fester, with each one claiming their connection to Liferoot was the true intent of Uena. This rivalry sparked fighting amongst the once peaceful and prosperous people. Formations of blossoms during the Bloomtide started to be interpreted differently by each faction's priests, which only sowed discord even further. Liferoot continued to thrive, but the people of Abrille began to use its blessings against each other instead of as a means of unity. As factions continued to fracture Abrille, a blight spread across the eastern lands. Crops began to fail, and the faction responsible for these lands, the Sunhoods, secretly began practicing forbidden rituals beneath Liferoot to attempt to draw out more of its power. The rites worked temporarily and produced a bounty for the eastern lands. This unfortunately came at a cost. The soil throughout Abrille that Liferoot touched began to turn grey and brittle over time, with some land no longer able to sustain the life it once could. This turning of fortunes became known as the Hollow Harvest. Mistrust spreads amongst the people towards Liferoot, and those that once worshipped Uena for the prosperity the tree once gave them turn their backs on their deities. Nearly half a century passes, and priests that dedicated their lives to Liferoot started to point the blame of misfortune towards the common folk, indicating their lack of devotion to the spirits has caused turmoil across the continent. Small villages and families all over Abrille are torn apart by conflict. The Bloomtide turns hateful and violent for the first time, as rival sects clash over the meaning of Liferoot's blossoms. Blood spills for the first time at the roots of the great tree as a young druid of Uena, who is trying to stop an argument, is accidentally killed during the once celebrated event. It isn't long before a sickness, which became known as bark rot, sweeps across the lands. Victims waste away, consumed by despair and terror before their bodies form into wild plants or ashen husks of trees. This sickness seems to be more common to those near Liferoot in its blossoms. The tree, once verdant, drips with sticky orange resin down the blackened bark, and the flowers fall and disintegrate at a rate faster than in the past, though priests deny the connection of the sickness and Liferoot, continuing to blame the common folk for their lack of devotion to the spirits. Some victims of bark rot are buried in the soil surrounding Liferoot by local priests, though it is unclear if this has any effect on the widespread misfortune. Rumours of walking plants begin to spread. It only takes 20 more years before, for the first time in history, the Bloomtide does not occur, as no blossoms appear on Liferoot. Panic spreads amongst farmers who refuse to plant their crops, fearing their harvest will be cursed. The 3 factions blame each other, and the conflict escalates into open violence. Some desperate Sunhood priests begin worshipping this new version of Liferoot, which appears lifeless. They believe the twin spirits, Atris and Adrin, are the path forward and teach through lessons of decay and destruction that the land will someday grow anew. Some people shun these priests, but given the bleak state of the world, they continue to attract new followers who pray mostly in secret. In opposition to these corrupt sunhoods, members of all three factions form a unified coalition known as the Blight Wardens, who are tasked with snuffing out those that would use Liferoot's corruption for power. Some are also tasked with trying to figure out how to fix the once great tree. Abrille continues to live on in anguish. Liferoot's branches appear skeletal, twisted and blackened, with occasional drooping blossoms that leak orange resin-like tears. The people all across the land have fallen paranoid, distrustful and independent. The factions have mostly dispersed, except for the corrupt sunhoods. The bloom tide is no longer celebrated due to the complete corruption of Liferoot. The people mostly keep to themselves and no longer bother to share their aid with neighbouring towns. The Blight Wardens continue the fight against the corrupt sunhoods and their followers on their search for answers. Some believe Liferoot should be destroyed if possible. There are others who believe that there must be a way to save it and return the land to its once flourishing states.